Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with aBlogtoWatch. Today I'm going to review the very interesting Accutron Spaceview 2020. This is a mysterious watch, and when I say mysterious, I literally mean there's certain things about this movement's operation that I don't quite understand. And I've been wearing this watch pretty continuously for a while. I like it. It's grown on me in a lot of ways. It's got to be a high-tech watch with some of the most interesting character and personality. There was this Mad Men episode where they pretended to make an advertisement for an Accutron watch. And they were talking about the original Accutrons that Bulova produced in the 1960s that had tuning fork. And a big part of the thing was it's not just a timepiece, it's a conversation piece. And this idea that, people would look at this watch and be like, what is it? What are you wearing? And there's a lot of history about the original Accutron Spaceview, the tuning fork movement, why they had these open dials and stuff like that. Now, this is not a tuning fork watch, and that's super important to say. Accutron today is a new company. Bulova was purchased a while ago by Japanese Citizen Group, and a couple of years ago, Accutron actually broke off from Bulova, and now it's its own brand, and it's interesting thing, and it's evolved into a couple of different stuff, and I actually like Accutron. Now, this Spaceview 2020 has a new movement that the Citizen Group developed, and they thought it would be perfect for this, and it is an electrostatic movement. So it's a quartz movement, but the idea is that it generates power through electrostatic energy generation as opposed to battery power or a rotor that then powers a generator, which then charges a battery. This works a little bit different, but again, there's some interesting mysteries here. And Citizen with Accutron claim that this is the world's first electrostatic movement. I believe them. It's not brand new technology, but in the watch world, it certainly is, and I'll talk about that. So the whole movement and the case and all that is this design based around this new movement, inspired by this old concept with this sort of movement and openness that looks like a tuning fork movement in some ways. So you have to know a lot of layers of history and things like that to really understand that. And I mean, this is a niche interest watch by definition, again, because you have to understand so much. And if you see here, I'm tapping it. And as I tap it, these little turbines are turning. What you're seeing is the electrostatic power generation. So the idea is that small movements translate into small current of static electricity. And that current feeds what they call an accumulator. How an accumulator and a battery is particularly different is beyond my level of electrical engineering. I don't necessarily understand that, but there's two sets of them in here. There's one down here that powers something, and there's another one which powers the seconds hand. So essentially we have two systems, one for the hour and minutes and one for the seconds. And the reason you need two is the seconds are a particular big drain on power. Just like the original tuning fork watches, they wanted this to have a sweeping seconds hand. Now, the funny thing is that the Bulova Precisionist, also produced by Citizen, is another line of high accuracy quartz movements, which came out just over 10 years ago. And it also has a sweeping seconds hand, and this has a different system to create a sweeping seconds hand, but it creates so much power that it has its own turbine system for it. And this turbine turns when the system to power the seconds hand is on. The interesting thing about this watch is that even though it will continue to tell the time for a while, if you don't move it for 5 minutes, the system turns off the seconds hand and it just goes back to 12 and just stays still. So, and then you have to jiggle the watch around and play with it. So that's one of the sort of interesting mysteries, is sort of you're not always sure when the seconds hand is going to stop. And then when you pick it up, I think the Accutron website advises you to shake the watch for 3 to 5 seconds, kind of violently, to get the seconds hand working again, and it will. And I was wearing it for a few minutes here before this video review, so which is why it's moving. But I think sometimes it's easy to become frustrated. You pick the watch up and you're like, hey, come on, seconds hand, I picked you up now. Why aren't you working? One of the mysteries about this watch is the power reserve. I don't know the power reserve. It's not really clearly indicated. It's alluded to. I think the idea is that this watch does not have a very long power reserve if you take it off and don't wear it for more than a few days. It doesn't have batteries in the same way the traditional quartz watch does. It obviously tells time the same way, but it doesn't have batteries the same way. So it goes into this power savings mode when you don't touch it for a while, but then, it sort of stops. But then if you want it to start working again, you just hit it and play with it and get it started again, which I think is actually the funnest thing, because you have, similar to an automatic watch, the ability to just put down the watch, that's quartz, and just pick it up and play with it. And yes, you could say that Seiko Kinetic is similar. That's true, but depending on the age of the watch, it doesn't work as well. And I think there's certain instances where if it completely dies for a certain number of years, and you'd have to jumpstart the movement, something like that. I'm not hugely sophisticated with all the servicing parameters of the Seiko Kinetic, but bottom line is that this is an interesting mixture of what we like about mechanical watches and quartz. Understandably, this movement and the sort of story around it is very difficult to explain. It's taken me a while to really understand it. And I guess that goes to my second mystery is, there's an automatic rotor in the case. I know because I can hear it, and I don't know what it does. It's not really mentioned on the website. Maybe it's related to the system which powers the movement for the seconds hand. So right here, these two are just sort of powering a little bit for it to just tell the time. But since the second hand requires so much more power all the time, maybe that's where it's being generated. I'm not really sure. I love that I don't know, and I'm sure it'll be explained to me at some point. And yeah, I could just go ask Accutron, but sometimes I'd like to do these reviews from the perspective of a lay consumer who would just be going on their website and being like, okay, proprietary electrostatic movement, I got this, I got that. And then you get the watch, you're like, wait a minute, why does it have an automatic rotor? I'm just not sure if they mention it. The case here is on the bigger side. It's 43.5 millimeters wide. And it has, I think, like 16 millimeters of thickness here. So I think it's comfortable. The Spaceview 2020 case is my preferred way of wearing this. Accutron also made a watch with this movement called I think it's like the Spaceview DNA, which has sort of a more modern, futuristic style case, but the lugs are kind of long, and I didn't really find it to be, very comfortable on my smaller wrists. Sapphire crystal there, great sort of view into the dial, a lot of legibility, good lume. So they captured a lot of the essence of the original Spaceview. And, and here it is in electrostatic form. Again, I'm tapping the case here because this is how you generate power. And I really think it's funny to just tap your watch. People, speaking of conversation piece, you sit there, you start tapping your watch, and people are like, what are you doing? And you're like, well, that's how I'm powering it. Well, that's definitely a conversation starter. Right there. There's a few different versions of the Spaceview 2020 that Accutron makes. This one has the beautiful matching green alligator strap. There's some different dial styles, not just green, different straps, but overall the same type of theme here. Very cool watch, certainly very niche. Price is $3,650. You can see more on aBlogtoWatch. Thanks.